Hey everyone, this is Greg Fontus, lead consultant for DEI at Proactive Talent. Today we are chatting with Kym Ali, who will be talking about inclusive wellness, and it will begin right after this message.
Proactive Talent is the leading power partner to your recruiting engine. We're a coalition of recruiting and talent brand practitioners who provide the necessary tools and talent to tighten your hiring gaps, bolster your retention rates, and embolden your company mission, giving you the competitive edge needed in the ever-changing recruiting industry. With a holistic approach, we work alongside clients to help them build a powerful recruiting engine that enables them to efficiently attract, recruit, and retain top talent. We specialize in adding power to your full candidate journey from talent attraction to hiring to retention. Our clients include enterprise companies like Uber Postmates, Siemens Energy, Boston Consulting Group, Basic American Foods, and GoDaddy, as well as fast-growing startups like Calendly, Discord, and Gong. Please reach out to us today. We would love to have a conversation. You may contact us at www.proactivetalent.com. That's www.proactivetalent.com.
All right, everyone. Hello once again to another episode of our Ask Me Anything DEI podcast. Listen, I am super excited about our guest today. I know I'm going to allow her to introduce herself to you all, but we have none other than Kym Ali, who is here, who's going to be just giving some insight as we just dialogue about all things DEI. Kym, how are you this day?
Hi, Greg. I am doing well. Thank you so much for that powerful introduction.
Awesome. You're very welcome. I'm glad that you're here. So listen, Kym, for those listeners that are here tuning in, can you share with them who is Kym Ali? Who are you? What do you do? What is your area of specialty? All of those types of things. Go ahead and share a little bit about yourself for us.
Absolutely. Well, like Greg said, my name is Kym Ali. I am a registered nurse coming up on 17 years now. I cannot believe I'm that old.
Wow.
But my background is in maternity nursing. And I had the opportunity to not only work all across the United States, but even worked overseas in a country called Qatar for 5 years. Um, had an unfortunate event that happened over there that led me down the road of DE&I work. And so now I own my own consulting firm and I provide inclusive wellness and diversity, equity, and inclusion solutions to companies.
All right. So what do you mean by inclusive wellness? Right. Let's go there. Like that's what you do. You have your own firm. You have your own practice. What does that even mean in your world?
Sure. Well, we all know that the workforce is diverse now, right? We have people from different social, economic backgrounds. And so inclusive wellness is the practice of, taking a look at your employee demographics. What neighborhoods do your employees live in? Do they have access to grocery stores, right? Is transportation an issue? Are they able to get their annual exams to see what their current health status is? For a lot of people, that is actually a luxury. So just encouraging companies to be more inclusive with their wellness and EAP programs so that way it's accessible for everyone.
Excellent. I love that. It's such a valuable thing to have that mindset and that focus when working, partnering, working in an organization. It's so important to have those things. And so I guess for me, the question I want to ask you is why now? Why focus on inclusive wellness at this point in time? Sure, I recognize that our world is in a very particular space, a very interesting space as DEI is on the rise. Organizations are turning more of a focus towards DEI. But we are in a great resignation, right? We're in a place where people are just leaving their jobs. So why now? Why focus on inclusive wellness now?
Great question. Well, I mean, if we look at the pandemic and the communities the pandemic has impacted the most, for example, African Americans, we are only what 13% of the U.S. population, but we are 17% of the number of COVID deaths.
Mm,
Same with the Hispanic community. I think they are now what 15, 16% of the U.S. population. And
mhm,
again, they account for, I believe, 20% of the COVID deaths, right? And so
mhm,
that's an indicator that this population has, health disparities. We have the highest rates of hypertension, diabetes, kidney disease, right? And so it's
mhm,
time that, we start looking into the community and making our communities healthier because the people that live in the community, they work at companies, they are a part of an organization, and when you look at it, how much money is an organization losing for absenteeism due to illnesses?
mhm,
How much money are they spending on health insurance premiums, right? Because people have pre existing conditions when they are hired with the organization. And performance, when you aren't feeling well and you're sick and tired, you can't show up and perform 100% because you're sick. And so I think if organizations, look at it from that vantage point, they will start to see an increase in their bottom line.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so essentially what I'm hearing is, what you're saying is there is an intersection that exists between one's physical, emotional state as well as their performance. And when those things are lockstep one with another, that can result into greater performance results, greater meeting your KPIs, your objectives, all of those types of things. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Yes, Greg, that is what you were hearing.
Powerful stuff, powerful stuff. So it's really taking a different approach or more a more holistic approach rather to the ideal of authentically showing up yourself, right? Being able to show up not just in your identities and particularities, but in your health, right? But in your mental, emotional state, all of those types of things, which is powerful. It is powerful. So with that being said, Kim, what are some of the barriers that prevent some of that? Like, what are some of the things that you feel may get in the way from being able to have this inclusive wellness? What are some of those challenges, some of those hurdles, whether it is self hurdles, whether it is organizational barriers? What are some of those things that get in the way of being able to truly walk and live and breathe in this inclusive wellness?
Right. Well, one, lack of knowledge. If you have not identified the problem or a correlation between the two, then, it will be difficult to come up with solutions, right? So that's one. Now, most organizations are still working remote. So people don't have to come to the office, right? And when you don't physically see your team, health and wellness gets put on the back burner, so to say, right?
Mhm.
And then three, even the whole inclusive notion, this is still new and uncomfortable for a lot of people. When people hear inclusivity and, diversity, equity, and inclusion, a lot of people become afraid, right? What is going to change if we start, trying to make more inclusive, healthy workspaces? Am I losing something? Is my job at risk? And so just breaking down, those fears and anxieties of the unknown will help break through a lot of barriers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. That's good. I love all of that. I love that. I love that. So switching gears, right? Just a tad bit, but kind of still staying in this wheelhouse of inclusive wellness. I just love this concept. I just love this idea. So that's why I want to stay with it. So with it, how does an organization, we're working, let's say we're working with a startup organization, a organization in a hyper growth phase. How do we then work alongside with them to develop, create a strategy to where inclusive wellness is a part of that. Like what does that tangibly look like in the day-to-day practice, like especially in particular in this remote space that we're in, this remote world that we're in, which doesn't look like many organizations are going back into the office. So what does it look like? How do we implement that into a day-to-day strategy?
Right. Well, the first is, do an assessment. Look at the demographics of your employees. How many are of African descent, or Caribbean, African American? How many are of Hispanic population? West Indian, Asian. And then, you want to educate yourself on, cultural norms. What are some of the
Mhm.
dishes that they like to eat? So, perfect example. I was actually looking up a case study the other day, and this was done in New Mexico, which has a high Mexican population. And so, Mexican food is based on, a lot of starches, the tortillas, burritos, nachos, right? And so there's one company that managed to implement nutritional courses. That was the, foundation of their inclusive wellness program. And so they were able to show that, hey, you can still have the foods you love, but just swap things out. So, for
Mhm.
example, instead of using flour tortillas, they would swap it out for maybe corn or even, use lettuce as a substitute, right?
Mhm.
Instead of using sour cream, use Greek yogurt as toppings, instead of the salsa, which is loaded with sodium, use just plain fresh tomatoes, right? And
Mhm.
so what they did next was they partnered with a local clinic so that way people could go and, get their blood pressure, blood sugar checked. And within a matter of a couple of months, people were able to come off of some of their medications. People adapted a healthy lifestyle and their performance increased at work because they, weren't getting the itis after lunch. That's not normal. Food should give you energy, not make you tired and sleepy. And so just small changes like that, not only was the company able to save money, but they were able to increase engagement and increase the performance of their coworkers. Of their employees.
Mhm. Wow. Well, I feel like my whole diet's about to change now. Like you just came from my whole life right now, and yeah, I gotta think about that one. I don't know how I feel about that one.
So you're from the Caribbean, right?
I am. I do have Caribbean roots and
Yeah,
starches and all of those
I
things.
know,
I'm
I
like,
know, Bill.
wow. I'm gonna have to process that one. I'm gonna have to process that one. No, but that's awesome. So tell me, how does your work, right? And you mentioned, you're an RN, you've been doing that for a number of years, right? How much of that, and that experience, in particular to being overseas, much did that influence, this inclusive wellness? Like how much did that influence your way of thinking, influence why this is a passion area of yours? Like how much did that influence you?
Well, long story short, as I said in the beginning, I was working overseas, and unfortunately, I lost my job to systemic racism. And the events that led up to me being fired, it was stressful. It affected my mental health, um, my emotional health. And, if the organization had resources in place, such as maybe inclusive wellness or, employee resource groups for minority, maybe it wouldn't have affected me so much. And because of that lack, it encouraged me to start my own company, right? And
Mhm.
so that way I can, be a source to individuals who are maybe working in a toxic work environment, or if there's an
Mhm.
organization, that recognizes that there are social economic gaps, between minorities and Caucasians, then maybe they want to, help them and, make their quality of life better. And so that's,
Mhm.
in a nutshell, that's why I started my business.
Mm. Wow, wow. I'm sorry you did lose your job, but I'm grateful for your business and what you're doing because it is so needed.
Mhm.
As you're, sharing these things, I'm thinking about just how we're in this great resignation period, right? Where individuals are just leaving their jobs. They're not saying that they don't want to be in that same stressful environments like
Mhm.
it was pre-pandemic. And I'm just thinking, I'm curious, love to get your thoughts on this. Like, would that have been different? Like, would we be experiencing a great resignation if companies, organizations had in place inclusive wellness practices or were more intentional about that in the foods, but the work hours and
Mhm.
offering gym memberships or credits or whatever and whatever have you. Because I'm under the belief that I think that the numbers would not be as high. I think individuals will be more connected to their workplaces. But because those practices weren't in place, that's why these numbers are so high, and we're in this movement of the Great Resignation. Curious to know, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. But there's another piece to that as well,
Hmm.
and that's the belonging. I did something. If you're on LinkedIn, guys, follow me on LinkedIn. But I did something about that, and I said burnout versus belonging. Why are people really leaving? And people are tired. People don't feel included. I've heard of
Hmm.
stories where people are intentionally left out of Zoom meetings now because, we're working remote. People are overlooked for promotions now. People are intentionally left off of emails that are pertaining to them now. Um, and so people, they want to feel valued, right? Everyone
Hmm.
wants to feel like they belong and appreciated, and it's impacting people's mental health. And
Hmm.
McKinsey and Company did a study last year. It was the end of last year, and it's called Women in the Workplace. You can look it up. But 60% of Black women said they have experienced some form of emotional trauma in the workplace over the last year,
Hmm.
right? And so people are tired. Being home has opened up people's eyes. People can see, hey, I can run a business while I'm home, or
Hmm.
I can go back to school, or, I can go work someplace where, I'm respected and I'm valued and I can show up to work and be my
Hmm.
best self. Right. And so I
Hmm.
think that's another reason why we are seeing the great resignation. People are just fed up.
Hmm. Hmm. No, absolutely, absolutely, and I love that. Here's where I want to push a little bit, if that's all right. You talk about burnout versus belonging, and I completely agree. Yes, people do want to feel like they belong. They do want to feel like they matter. But to be honest, for me in particular, once I started working in this remote world, the ideas of work-life balance really became cloudy,
Mhm.
and being at home got a little bit more exhausting,
Yeah.
right? There's many who have this Zoom burnout, or Microsoft Teams burnout, or Google Meet burnout, whatever platform your organization is using. We get tired of being a part of those meetings. It gets exhausting waking up and you're home all day, and maybe you have your children that are with you. You are in the same spot most of the day, and it gets frustrating at times. It gets exhausting, and burnout now becomes part of the your reality, right? So how do you navigate those moments, right? To where we're saying yes, there's this element of belonging, but being in a remote world now can also lead to burnout.
Yeah.
So what do we do with that? How do we make sense of that?
Yeah. Well, I normally tell people, one, set boundaries if you can, depending on, your boss and your coworkers,
Hmm.
but no more emails after 5 o'clock, right? And no
Ooh,
emails before 9
coming
o'clock.
from my life right now. Like, oh my goodness.
But that's how you avoid the, remote burnout, right?
Hmm.
Another example, the Zoom fatigue. If there's something that can be an email instead of a meeting, just send an email, right? Um,
Hmm.
also, allocating I'm sorry. Also allocating a workspace, right? So try not to have your office in your living room because it's hard to disconnect from work when your laptop is staring you in your face while you're trying to watch Netflix.
Mm,
So,
mm,
you know,
mm.
so try
Help
to
us.
set up try to set up boundaries if you can.
Hmm.
And dress up like you're going to work. I know a lot of people show up to work in their hair rollers and pajamas. You know, try to set the tone as if you are actually going to an office. So that way you'll be able to disconnect, right? So at 5 o'clock,
Hmm.
shut it down, no more emails, and take your work clothes off and put on, your evening clothes.
Hmm. Hmm.
Those are
Hmm.
just some of the tips. Take a lunch, take your 1 hour lunch. Don't sit there and work through
Hmm.
your lunch.
Hmm. Hmm.
So those are just some of the ways we can avoid burnout from working at home.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Boundaries, yeah, that's critical. That is critical. And as boundaries and routine is what I'm hearing. You
Yeah,
know, follow the same routine as though you were going to work. You
yeah,
wake up, you get ready, and you go into that space, and you take your lunch break, and you kind of shut things down after a certain hour. That's critical there. As I'm hearing that, I'm also thinking about separating your spaces,
yeah,
because sometimes we could, if we're sitting on the couch, right, or we're working in the kitchen, then the kitchen becomes the workspace, the couch becomes the workspace, and you'll never be able to turn things off and on. So I think for me, what has helped me is if I'm in work mode, I'm in the office, in my home office, I'm working there, and then when I'm done, I leave there, and I
yeah.
don't need to come back until the next day, so that my mind doesn't get triggered in that same setting. So setting those boundaries, having those routines, I think is critical as well.
Exactly. And another tip, try not to have your work email on your personal phone.
Ooh,
Yeah, because even if you're out of the house, if you get a notification from your boss, I mean, we're inclined to check it.
you're right. You're right. You're right. And I think it's because we live in such a this high demand
Yeah,
mindset, this capitalistic high demand mindset of, if you're not engaged, then you're losing money, you're not productive, and I know for me, I got like four different emails on my phone, and
oh,
they
wow.
come up. I'm checking them, but I know I have to do better at
Yeah.
separating those mindsets. I used to do that. But not so much anymore. And so, thank you for pointing out all of my flaws today. I greatly appreciate you. So 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 with that being said, that being said, what would be your biggest piece of advice that you would give someone? I know you've shared some things about burnout, but what would be your biggest piece of advice that you would give someone who is in their work experience and they're really trying to move towards creating a culture of inclusive wellness for their organization, whether it be someone in a DEI functional role or whether it just be someone who just has a passion for this and wants to do better? Like, what would be the biggest piece of advice that you would give them?
Just think about your employees, think about everything that has happened in the world the last 2 years, a pandemic.
Mhm.
So many people have lost loved ones. So many people have become ill. Social injustices, right? What are your
Mhm.
employees of color going through? Sit down, have a chat with them, do a pulse check on your people and see, what are they really dealing with? You may have someone on your team who is really struggling. I mean, it is a struggle just to show up at work, right? So any extra support that you can give your team, especially employees of color, I'm sure they would greatly appreciate it. And you never know, you could be saving someone's life just by checking in on them.
Mhm. Absolutely. Phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal. And so, um, with that being said, we're about wrapping up now, Kim. With that being said, how can people contact you? How can people, if people want to know who is Kym Ali? I got to know who she is. I want to know more about her. I want to know her story. I want to connect with her. How can people do that? What's the best way that we can find you and connect with you?
Sure. I'm always on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. It's Kim's actually Kym, Kim with the Y, and then Ali is my last name. My website is www.kymali, And you can email me at info@kymali.com.
Awesome, awesome. Kym with a Y, everyone. Kym with a Y. Listen, you're listening. Whoever's listening right now, I need you to pull up your phone, pull up your laptop, go to LinkedIn. I need you to add her. She is phenomenal. Kym, I just want to say thank you so much for just joining us today. You have provided so much insight, so much things for me to think about and reflect upon personally as well as professionally. You're phenomenal, and I want to just say thank you for joining us today. You've been an extreme pleasure to just talk with today.
Oh, thank you, Greg. Well, I have to say, I admire you for having a platform like this. It's really important to share new and innovative ideas. So thank you for everything that you were doing for the community.
You're very welcome. Thank you all for tuning in, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you have not already, please take advantage of the resources cited in the podcast description. They are there to benefit you. Until next time, goodbye.